Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Talk Too Much Sports as opposed to Circling Seattle Sports. I was messing around with the idea of sticking you into Circling Seattle Sports just because of the exhibit being shown in Seattle, but I feel like that may be me pulling the strings a little bit. Uh, so my first interview series in hockey, that's really cool, and I'd like to add more to that. I'm here with Kim Sass. If you didn't know, Miss Sass had her art displayed at the Kraken Community Iceplex and has been I don't know if it's official where that'll be next, but I did read somewhere where it might be. So I think I'll touch on that later because I don't want to spoil it. Um,
TBD.
oh, okay. So there we go. But I mean, just looking at your career in college, I mean, we've got some accolades. So I always like to look at the accolades just to, give the flowers here. I mean, AC hockey all academic team in 2011, 2012, 2009, 2010, ECAC goaltender of the year, first team and all rookie team honors in 2008, 2009, now in a career in architecture, an artist, and playing pro hockey. How have you, obviously, I'm sure you're a very busy person, but how have you been doing as of recent?
I feel like I'm so used to balancing a bunch of things just from being a student athlete, like at Colgate, from class to, practice and then all of your work after practice. I'm just so used to long nights. And then after Colgate, I went on to get my master's in architecture. And that for sure is a lot of attention to detail and a lot of long nights in the studio making models and drawings and everything. So I think I'm just used to being so busy that it's not even it's not even unique or anything crazy to me. But definitely keeping myself busy with my architecture job and forming my own art business as of recently last year. And then making sure the show has continued to tour all over to spread my message about the realities of pro women's hockey. And I actually did just play in a PWHPA showcase this past weekend in Montreal, and I got some minutes. So that was amazing to get back in net after a while of focusing, on my art and spreading, that the message through my art. So yeah, keeping busy.
And you definitely touch on some things that I am eager to find out about. But first, I want to keep with the structure of the show. Heading back to earlier years. So had the thought of playing hockey, as a kid ever crossed into your mind before you were asked to come and try out for a local team? Or you were doing figure skating and that was just kind of, hey, I am a child. I'm not thinking of anything else right now. Had that ever crossed, hey, maybe I want to do that,
I remember, so I started ice skating in general when I was probably like 3 with my parents and sister. And then I would say when I was around 5, I started doing figure skating lessons. And when I was 6 or 7, a local girls coach, coach that team was an all girls team and played in a boys league. So that coach came to the rink and saw my sister and I figure skating and asked my dad if we wanted to switch to ice hockey. And my dad played goalie in hockey growing up. So he jumped all over that. And I don't think I ever really, we would watch the Sabres. And actually, fun fact, Dominic Hasek was my childhood neighbor around the block.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. So growing up, like I remember just watching the Sabres and stuff like that, but and playing like street hockey at a young age with my neighbors, but I never really thought about playing ice hockey until that coach had asked. And I started out trying to play, I think, center, and I was terrible. So my coach was like, Kim, how about you go put on the goalie equipment and try that out? So I was excited because I liked all the special equipment that you got to wear. So once I started playing goalie, that was it. And from age 7 on, I was a goalie and my dad was my goalie coach. So that's how that happened.
So then taking a jump here a little bit, I mean, do you remember what you were feeling when you were declared the winner of the U16 overall goaltender competition? I mean, I mean, when you're that age, obviously at a younger age, anybody's different emotions are a thing, is it sort of something that you had worked towards? It was a recognition of your accomplishments at that time, or was it just sort of, hey, I did pretty good, I'm allowed to deserve a little bit here?
I think, yeah, the first part that you just touched on, I think I had been working so hard with goalie lessons, with Bob Janos, and also like at practices with my dad. I also was playing at that time probably JV, or maybe it was varsity at that time, not sure. Boys hockey for my public high school. So I was on the ice for two teams, girls and boys, and doing goalie lessons. So I think it was just a time where everything finally clicked, and I was so happy to be, I guess, rewarded for the work I was putting in.
So then we switch over to club hockey, and I mean, just kind of reading the club hockey stuff was a little bit. I mean, I was like, there's a lot going on here. I mean, New York State championship titles in 5 different years, quarterfinalists in USA Hockey Nationals 3 different years, several medals in the Empire State Games. I mean, what do you take from your time playing club hockey? Because at least from what I've gathered in club baseball and club soccer, right, is that if you're going to go to college or even play the sport professionally, um, playing club is pretty essential to that.
Yes. So I played for the Buffalo Bisons. The year that I talked about, when I was 7, we played for Amherst youth hockey that year, but then that whole group of girls decided to leave that boys league in Amherst, and we left and joined the Buffalo Bisons program. And that team, we decided to join the Canadian like club hockey league, so we would always be traveling and playing all the Canadian teams. And that same group of girls from when we were like 8 years old through right before we were signing to go play in college, we all like played together that whole time. So I think just like that many years of chemistry and playing with each other and practicing also helped us develop, together as a team and do well, and winning a bunch of state championships and getting to nationals a few times. And yeah, I think that definitely contributed, just all of us playing together for that many years.
I mean, that's something, just to look at on the sports aspect of it as a whole. I mean, you can put as many talented people as you want in a team, but if they can't play well together, it doesn't matter. And just that chemistry is always something that I think somewhat gets forgotten. I'm sure there are people that understand that, but there's sometimes where it's just like, hey, you've got these guys that are great at their individual things. Why aren't they great together? It's like, well, there's kind of your answer. I mean, I don't know. Chemistry is always something that I think sometimes gets downplayed, and I think that's a bad thing to happen because it's a team game. And then ultimately, what was your college decision and a recruiting process like? Did you have a clear idea of college? Was it kind of, hey, whatever best suits me? How did that come down for you?
At the time, we had gone to Niagara University and watched a college game, like as a team. I remember one time. So I knew college hockey existed, I guess, but I don't know. I just was so focused on getting better at hockey, and I wasn't really thinking about what I was going to do next, to be honest. But then, a bunch of my teammates began the process, and my dad started the process with me. So we developed like this Excel sheet and listed all of the universities that had graduating goaltenders, the year before I was going to enter the program, and figured out, like what number goaltender they were. I was clearly trying to find a place where I could enter in as the starter, or at the very least, like second string. And then, of course, also have to look at what they offer in terms of academics. I knew I was pretty strong in like STEM, like math and science. And I also, like, I guess, junior, senior year, really enjoyed art. So I kind of looked at schools that had both because I didn't necessarily want to make that decision, going in. So that kind of like narrowed down the list. And then we, of course, reached out to the schools, and then they would offer either like an official visit, or they would say like, you can come on an unofficial visit. So I think I had visited Princeton, Providence College, let's see where else, Niagara University, a couple others. I really enjoyed my time at Providence College. Loved the area, the location, like small school feel. But I think I was second on their list for goaltenders. So I think it was honestly down to Niagara University, but I didn't love the idea of staying so close to home to Buffalo. And then really late in the game, Colgate contacted me, saying they had an injury, one of their goalies looking. They had used up like all their scholarship money already, so that kind of stunk. But so I visited. I love the school. It's so pretty there. It's like kind of in the middle of nowhere, but it's on a hill. It's so pretty in the fall. So I decided to go there, declared my major with studio art and geography, double major. I think I maybe tried to take some classes like that had to do with pre-med or like biology, but I knew right away, like also juggling hockey and something like that is pretty difficult. I had some teammates that did it, but I stuck with art, which was still a lot of time, like, trying to finish paintings and drawings and everything. But yeah, I had a super freshman year. I kind of came in with like that I have nothing to lose kind of attitude, and just tried to play my best like every game that I had the chance to. And I ended up winning 3 awards that you mentioned earlier, league awards. I remember I had to give a speech like I think it was at Dartmouth at the end of the year. My team, we ended up losing in playoffs, but all the award winners had to go to this banquet and like give a speech. So here I am as a freshman in front of all these amazing players at Dartmouth, like the players, the teams that went on to like the championship, and like an acceptance speech in front of my parents went, my coaches went. It was a really cool experience, but I was terrible at public speaking at that point. Memory I will not forget. It was really cool.
So, and then this one's, I mean, you took away how I was going to ask you about your freshman approach, which is perfect. It's always interesting to see how you look at that, because especially if, you're someone that's achieved a good amount heading into it, you could easily look at it as, I'm confident in my abilities, I'm totally good to go. But it is interesting to hear how your situation went, where it's just like, hey, I'm just going to play my game and let it sort itself out. This one is totally personal curiosity as someone who's learning the game of hockey. As someone between the pipes, in those 40 save games, are you thinking about that, late into the third period? Are you exhausted, or is it just like, I just have to make the next save and we have to get out of this game?
I think both, but I think you kind of break it down into like when the puck is past the red line in your zone, and then you really have to turn it on. But then you kind of learn to like mentally take a little bit of a break, when the puck's in the other end, and take a sip of water and like reset. But yeah, there were some 60-shot games at Colgate against Cornell specifically. I remember that game. Yeah. I was certainly busy at Colgate with shots. But I like that. I would rather be busy than standing there because my team is like, the best in the league. I I enjoyed facing a lot of shots.
I just do wonder about that, because I mean, after a while, it's gonna be like, hey man, how close are we to the final buzzer, But that 60, I can only imagine. So in sort of the same vein, did you ever think about having played the second most minutes in program history? That could have changed by now, but as far as I know, that's up to date information. Having played the second most minutes in program history, is that just something that that was who you were and that was part of the game itself?
Yeah, I didn't really think about that. I just kept trying to work hard in practice to get that start like each game. So it just kind of worked out the way it did.
So now
I know I had
sorry.
I had a pretty terrible sophomore year where I wasn't the starter. I think I was used to, performing well. I think a lot of goalies probably go through this in their careers where, one season, everything's going well, you're meshing with the team, you're playing well, they're playing well, and then you expect it to be like a certain way. And, certain players graduated, we had some new players, we were all adjusting as teammates, and, your expectations are different than reality sometimes. So I was getting, a little frustrated in my head. I think I just wasn't playing as well. So I ended up not being the starter my sophomore year, and then going back to starting my senior year. So I guess I was a starter for 3 years of my career and kind of like split time or backup sophomore year. So things aren't always perfect.
It's, taking that and looking at it, I mean, just knowing sort of the situation, how it played out here in Seattle. I mean, with Chris Drieger kind of being slated as the guy to begin the year and then Philip Grubauer being brought in, I'm sure that, I don't know. I mean, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it, maybe, because I know I've been messing with the idea all season. You're kind of the person that's been given the idea, hey, we're going to make you the starter. You're a guy this inaugural season. And then a guy like Grubauer comes on the market. It's like, oh, lack of a better word, oh shoot, this is a guy that's on the market, we should sign him, have a good tandem. And then I know Drieger's talked about, things haven't gone the way they wanted it. Obviously that I'm sure includes the losing aspect of it, but I'm sure maybe that other part has some play in that. And he's talked about just the mental aspect of it and changing up his routine and just being in a good place mentally. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot to balance there, um, just from
Yeah, I
as someone
think,
who is a goalie.
yeah, I would say even in my pro career, it's been a little different where once you hit the pro level, I feel like in college, I feel like they kind of strategically sign players usually to have like a very good number one, number two goalie and a more clear defined number three role. Whereas in pro, I feel like many of the years it's been everyone can compete. And so there's, it's not as defined as in college. And I think that has been something that I've struggled with, honestly, because even in club hockey and in, college, it was like you earned your starts, and then once your team and your coaches felt comfortable with you and confident in you, you had their trust and their confidence, and you just kind of like rolled with that. And I think it's a little bit different in pro where it's more like game to game basis. Yeah.
And again, as someone who's learning the game, I'm just kind of like, okay, let me soak up what you've got for me, because I'm just still trying to pick all this up. And it is really interesting to sort of gain this information because, again, baseball, football, those are kind of my first sports. And it's really interesting to see just how this breaks down, Good segue into the pro hockey game. So looking at the Buttes, your time with the Buttes in 2015, your first pro contract, only played 2 games for the team. I mean, how do you approach that? Because after that, you made the decision to focus on your architecture career after that season. I mean, how did that go for you? Was it a tough decision to make that shift over to I mean, obviously, I'm sure it was at least a little bit tough, but how did that ultimately break down for you in that 2015, 2016 era?
So I'll give you some context here. So 2012 was when I graduated from Colgate in art and geography, and my parents were like urging me towards that more stable career path versus like just being an artist. So I had taken one architecture course at Colgate, and I guess we felt that it was kind of like a mesh between, you know, more stable career path, but also you can still be creative in that career. So I was really depressed after I graduated, because it's like you go from playing a sport and getting very good at a specific thing for like almost like, you know, 20 years of your life. And then you're done. And at the point where I graduated, there was an option to go play in Europe. Or I think there was a pro league around, but it didn't pay, or not very well. And so I decided not to delay my grad school any longer, because it was already a 3.5 year program, because I didn't major in architecture in undergrad. So if I had, it would have been only 2 years. But so I said, all right, I guess no more hockey, and I just have to deal with this. So I had to take physics like at 8 a.m. that summer after graduating. I just remember being completely devastated, miserable that I didn't have that outlet. Like I wasn't going on the ice. I tried beer league, I think, and no one plays defense. It's not that same like competitiveness. No one really cares. So just like that was lost. So I just remember being miserable in grad school for about 3 years, trying to finish that. And in 2015, they had announced that they're going to pay players in North America. It's going to be a league, and a team was in Buffalo. And I just remember feeling like, you know, I wasn't done playing hockey. I had always wanted to keep playing. So I got back in shape. You know, I was like slugging coffee, sitting at my desk drawing for architecture for the past 3 years, like not really working out like I should have been if I was going to play hockey again. So had to, you know, whip myself back into shape in like, I don't know, 6 months, and then try out. So made the Buffalo Buttes team. Bree McLaughlin, an Olympian, was our starter. And then, I don't know, we all kind of struggled, us all three goalies. I got a few games, Makla got a few games, Bree played the majority, I think, that year. But yeah, I think I had a tough time, just like that. I was at the time finishing my thesis in the fall semester, or fall of that season, and then graduated technically in like January or February of 2016, and then started full-time work in architecture like as I was finishing the season. So it was just like so much to juggle at the same time that I felt like I couldn't really focus properly on hockey. I had also just got brand new goalie equipment that season. So like I felt like didn't really have time to like properly break my equipment in before playing. So that was like also a thing. And so yeah, I didn't play as well as I had hoped. So I think that led to like not being able to secure like a starter or a backup position for, like, I asked Buffalo and New York after that season, and they had already signed like number one, number two. They weren't going to pay number three anymore. So I was like, okay, there's no point in me even being a practice goalie at this point if I'm not being paid. So I might as well try to focus on my career. So I really didn't know if I was like retired or not. And then the third year of the NWHL, the Metropolitan Rivers coach called and said they had a number 2 position open, asked me if I wanted to move to New York City. So I knew I had loved New York. I had an internship for architecture in 2014. So I knew I could get a job easily there. It was just like super rushed. I had to send my portfolio resume to about like 20 firms and ask, I'm ready to move there across the state in, a week's time to make it there for practice. So it was just a crazy ask, I think, on like the league's part. But I did it because I missed hockey that much. And it was also not just for hockey, like my career, it definitely benefited me to like move there. But I moved away from my dog, my boyfriend of 3 years, my family, like literally dropped everything and went there. So I played there for the Riveters for 2 years. I think I played 1 game for, the 2017-18 season where we won the Isabel Cup championship. Our team like meshed super well. Our coach was amazing that year. Super fun year to be a part of. But again, I was like coming off of not being in hockey shape again because I had taken a year off. So, didn't play as well as I wanted to. So then that summer between 17-18, 18-19 season, I busted my butt working out and everything, doing on ice sessions with the goalie coach. I ended up playing more how I wanted to be playing. I guess it was the 3rd NWHL season with the Riveters. Got some more starts that season, but the whole season, our team, we weren't doing as well as we wanted to. We weren't gelling with the coach at all. It was just not a great season for the Riveters. So we didn't do as well as a team that year. I think a lot of frustrations were like boiling over like between the players and the league at that point. Salaries went from around like, I made $10K the first year. I made $3K the 4th year of the NWHL's existence. So we all kind of felt like, where is this going? Are we sure this is headed in the right direction? We were talking to players that were in the CWHL, the Canadian Women's Hockey League. That league had just folded around 2019. So we all kind of came together. A lot of us, most of us left the NWHL at that point. I became a board member of the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association, the PWHPA, in 2019. And our mission is to form a future livable wage, sustainable league, pays the players, so they don't have to have another job, has professional facilities, not playing in youth hockey rinks, not enough space to change, like big enough stands to hold, the fans that we can get to games, resources, proper staff, paying for equipment. A lot of times playing in the league, we would have to pay for half or all of our equipment. Goalies like that. I remember the 4th year, I paid for a whole new set. I think the league paid half of visible equipment at that point. And so I ended up paying more than I made to play professional women's hockey. So I think that was kind of the last straw for me. I had missed my last playoff game because they rescheduled it for a Friday in Minnesota. I had just started a new job on a Wednesday. I would have had to leave my new job on the second day, the Thursday, to travel with my team. So I decided not. I said I can't go. And so I was watching my team play this playoff game and lose the last game of the season, and I couldn't even go. I was watching from my desk in my office in New York. So it's just like stuff like that. It just needs to change. Like, this is not sustainable. players are like getting injured because they're not focusing on the proper training and recovery to be a professional athlete. They're trying to, be a full-time athlete, but also be a full-time, architect, lawyer, financial advisor. It's just insane. It's insane. That was a long-winded response.
No, I mean, you encompassed my pro stuff really well. I mean, I just was like, okay, it was funny. It's like, okay, there's that, that's good. It was like you're just hitting them all. So no, I mean, and viewing the exhibit, and as we talked about before we went live, right, the exhibit, not how you had intended it to, because of the way that they were shutting it down. Because again, I was able to get out there, I think 3 hours before it shut down, which sucks. So obviously, I don't think it was how you had intended it to look.
Right.
Reading that part of it about the split screens and the desk, I was like, well, I don't like putting this on, but we're gonna go with the explicit version of this show. That was just shit to see, And no, I mean, in covering the NWSL, and I mean the WNBA seems to have things a little bit more figured out, but they still have their issues. I see a little bit of it, but obviously there's more to it. It seems with learning more about, the PWHPA, and I think it's PHF now. Pro Hockey Federation is what they've changed branding to. So just with the board of directors spot, was that something that you were voted into or that you applied to? How did that ultimately formulate? Was that something that you had to put your name in for, or were you nominated?
Yeah, I would say like nominated or asked to be a part of this. I think just based on how vocal I was like towards the end of my last season with the NWHL, and like about, certain, like the way we were treated as players and trying to advocate for us. So I think they felt like, as a non-national team player, someone who's very vocal and isn't afraid to speak up about these issues, I think they felt like I would be a good fit for the role.
And I definitely, just the hopes of a pro league is, I mean, obviously that's important, but also just knowing what the NWSL has, making sure that whoever is part of making that league, that there is, a proper CBA in place. Cause I know that was a thing that NWSL didn't have until this past season, well, no, this past few months, I think it's only in place this current season, cause that was a thing. You talk about, getting injured, not having those proper, I mean, obviously doing different things. Bethany Balser, who's a star on our OL Reign here in Seattle, I mean, for winning Rookie of the Year, she was given a Chipotle gift card. It's stuff like that, and having to babysitting to earn money when you see all these pro men's players getting all this record money, right? And just knowing, because again, as a man covering these teams, I just have, like right now talking to you, I am taking in information. That's all I'm doing. It's just listening, like whether it's on Twitter, just generally gathering what's going on. I mean, you see it, and I just, that the markets are there. Like you can't tell me the WNBA market's not there. You can't tell me the NWSL market's not there. And as someone who, and I don't know how much you follow.
I mean, for hockey, yeah, like the Canadian versus US Olympic hockey game a few months ago, it was the most watched hockey game, male or female, since 2019. So you're right. You can't even make the argument that the viewership is not there, because it is. And all of those Olympian players are in the PWHPA. And so it's like you can't even say that that's a reason for us not to earn at least, the very least, a living wage. We're not asking for millions here.
Yep.
Just to focus on our sport.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, it's just, in covering all the teams, like if the Storm made a move right now, I would have to do it on the side, but I would post about it, right? And someone commented the other month, it was like, oh, nobody cares about the Storm. I'm like, I know that's horse shit. I know it, because just interaction and just seeing that, what I was going to say about the rain, they've moved to Lumen Field here where the Seahawks and the Sounders play. As someone who used to work in the retail store there, just because I wanted to get in the building, I want to be in there for these games. In the main team store that is pretty damn big, the only rain representation is a little tiny rolling rack that is halfway stocked, you know, and I wouldn't buy shit there because I know that they have better stuff on their website, and it's just a lot. It's just, and I'm sure you know about what I'm talking about. So it's just incredible
Mm-hmm.
just to see the lack of it. And again, as I am just trying to gather that information and pass it along for the position that I'm in. But it's just, I mean, you can see this, like you were saying with the Canada versus, I mean, even on Twitter, there was the debate, there shouldn't be pro women's Olympic women's hockey because
Yeah,
it's the two
hockey
teams.
and
I was like, that's just
Olympics.
horse. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because I'm saying stuff I'm sure that you already know, right? Is this, yep. So, it's
Yeah, I
just,
think it's for a lot of like pro women's sports starting out, it's like the chicken or the egg thing with broadcast deals and investors. And it's like, investors don't want to invest if the sport is not on TV. But then, the broadcast companies don't want to put the sport on TV because they don't have investors and ads lined up. And it's like, someone has to make the first move here, like, or else it's just not going to happen. You can't, like you said with the merchandise, like if it's not there in front of people's eyeballs, like they don't even know about it. So it's
yep,
like, how
yep.
could they even support it? How could it grow?
With
Just, it's very
yeah,
frustrating.
with the rain stuff. I mean, I work with the Kraken on the retail side because I'm in college. I have to make money somehow. Journalism isn't paying me yet, which is fun. Someone asked me one day at our store, they go, "Do you know where to get rain stuff?" And because I cover the team, I do. So luckily enough, they found the right guy. But I know that the Dick's Sporting Goods out near the Iceplex does, and Dick's has done a semi decent job at getting WNBA stuff and NWSL stuff out that I've seen, right? But yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, with the NBA side of it too, on Twitter, the Finals MVP, you could not buy her jersey. You would have to buy a customized jersey and put her name on it to get it's like you're saying. If it's not there, people can't buy it, and the market, yeah. So that's why I like doing these so much, is because I
Right.
can get this side. Because anybody can go out and interview a Seahawk, but telling these stories is a lot of what I like to do. So that's our little rant there. I guess to look at it this way, have you seen any positive change in the pro women's game since you began your career? I mean, what have you seen? It could have been baby steps. It could have been some milestones. What positive things, I mean, have you been able to see so far?
I think youth involvement, like, registration numbers have gone through the roof for girls hockey since I started. The age in which people start getting recruited has gone down. So they're getting calls like they sign, I don't know, sophomore year, I think now. Whereas like we were waiting till senior year to like commit. It was like no big deal. So it's definitely getting a lot more competitive, which is a great thing for the sport. And I think in terms of pro hockey, like obviously we're all thankful that we even had the chance to play, pro, even though we didn't find it up to our standards. I think that just having that opportunity to continue playing after college, like I said, a lot of players come out and like are super depressed because they don't have hockey in their lives. So that, I think, plus all of these steps that I think both sides, are trying to advocate for more, the PHF and the PWHPA. So I think hopefully in the near future we'll see some major improvements. Like you mentioned, the CBA for the NWSL players. I think the PWHPA, I'm sure, would like a similar thing. Like our whole association has been set up, trying to take into account the players' voices first. So I think that would definitely be a part of a future league. So
Yeah, and that's, I mean, just kind of, that was the thing. I mean, because you talk about the Olympic teams, I was like, I really don't care who's on the men's team. I know that my Kraken have Maddie Beniers who is on there, and that's great and all. But I was like, just for them, I was like, I want a Hillary Knight jersey, and it was just like, I mean, I think there's the official there's an official website, because I didn't want to buy a fake one. Um, but it was, I don't know. It's just amazing to think about. And then trying to say, hey, and that's the problem I know in the NWSL, a lot of people have. They see the U.S. women's national team, they're like, that's great. But it's like, you do know they play on a club level back in the States, right? And then just trying to find where these different players were, you know, and just being able to, watch
yeah,
these games,
a lot of people don't know. Yeah, even I feel like even for soccer, they watch U.S. women's soccer and
Yeah.
kind of like just forget about them for another year or so till their
Yeah.
next match. But yeah,
Because I'll talk to people about the rain, because I'll go to cover them, and the people at work, they're like, where are you going? I was like, I have to cover a rain game. They're like, what's that? And I'll have to explain it to, and even Megan Rapinoe, who was great, do not get me wrong, but she is not the best player on that team. She's not. I'll have to be like, you know who Megan Rapinoe is? I'm like, yeah. Like, she plays club. She's like, she does what? And it's just the same conversation again and again, So
right. And
switching
it's
over.
like these Olympians. Oh,
No,
just
you're
one
good.
more thought.
You're good. Yeah.
These Olympians are not. They don't make up the entire pro leagues, right? Like,
Yeah. Oh
and,
yeah.
and even the Olympians will admit this, though, that everyone should give credit to the players right now that have other jobs and are also juggling hockey or soccer or whatever it is, because we're essentially keeping these pro leagues alive while balancing multiple careers, because Olympians get a stipend or whatever it is, a salary so that they can focus on training, and all the players, the non-national team players, don't. And so I think a lot of credit should be given to the players that are juggling multiple careers. And unfortunately, I think many people don't even realize those players exist. So that's just sort of how it is right now. But hopefully in the future, things will change.
Yeah, and I think, again, in a little part that I can do, that's kind of what I've been trying to do with these interviews, is get these people's stories out there. Like, I mean, obviously trying to get yours out there, but you've done a really good job at getting your story out there, right? But just people like that, like you were just talking about, that's sort of the point. So people like, hey, if they get a chance to go out to a game, I want to learn about her because she's my new favorite player. And then boom, have this available so you can actually go sit down and watch it and learn about her and her story. So I want to go over to the architecture, art, and many other things that you've been involved in. This one might be a stretch. Have you seen any legitimate similarities, in your hockey career and your architecture career? I mean, is there anything that you can kind of see that's similar in those two aspects of it, or is that sort of like,
I
what
think,
I do is different?
yeah, like I think there's definitely attention to detail, like and the repetition of learning a new skill on the ice as a goalie and doing it over and over again so that you can never get it wrong, basically. And learning in architecture and all the computer modeling that we have to learn, and how to detail things. It's just like you learn by doing. So, and then of course teamwork can apply not just in architecture but to basically any career. And I would say also like geometry a little bit, because as a goalie, you have to make sure that you're on angle and square, your body square, like to the middle of the net to the puck, like a direct line, and make sure that you stay with the puck. So I guess, yeah, just a little bit of geometry in both, obviously with architecture and, drafting and three-dimensional modeling. So.
And then, so I know that I think it was in Colgate University magazine. they stated that, I mean, you stated that seeing a job go from initial sketches to a physical space is your favorite part of your work. Is there something that's like a crowning achievement to you in your architecture career so far, or you're just kind of looking towards the next thing? You don't really look at it that way.
I've been a part of a few pretty cool projects. I was part of the Buffalo Niagara International Airport renovation,
Oh,
and
wow.
I was part of the drawing process, the construction documents, before I had left to go play for the Riveters, like in 2016, 17. And construction projects take a very long time to complete. So it's funny because within the past year, they just finally completed this project, and just getting to fly back into Buffalo, Niagara, Buffalo Airport, and seeing, things that I had worked on, I had drafted in the model. It's like just crazy to say that I was a part of something, that so many people go through every day. And then another cool project I was a part of was the Coney Island Brewery, like I guess expansion project. So in Brooklyn, check that out. I was a part of that.
Huh. No, I mean, yeah, something like an airport. I mean, like you were saying, how many people go through it. Just what you stated with seeing a job
Hmm.
go to a physical space, I'm sure on its own it's really cool. But something like that is like, hey, I was part of this creation. Coney, I'm gonna have that just so I can check that out later. But Coney Island Brewery, I didn't even know that was the thing. Um, I've been to New York twice, so
Yeah.
me thinking I
So
remember stuff. uh,
it's a cool spot down there. It's like there's a whole like strip. There's like a boardwalk and everything. Um, what was I gonna say? Yeah, I feel like a lot of times as architects we get lost in like finishing the 2D drawing sets. Um, Everything sometimes just gets a lot like super flat in our minds, and then just like being able to see it in construction is just amazing.
So, and then here, kind of switch over to your involvement with where we're at here in Seattle. How did having your art displayed at the Iceplex ultimately come into play? Was that Seattle reached out, or I know that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was at MSG with the Rangers, and they had was it what, a Women in Hockey Day? Um,
Yeah.
so how did the Kraken get involved here? How did we reach that?
So I had started the first painting of this series in 2019 when I was still in New York, kind of around the same time that all of us were getting super frustrated about certain things. So I started with championship ring, the red painting of our ring, and just like in talking with teammates, just kind of like laughing but rolling our eyes and being like, no one actually knows that we paid for our championship rings and like so many other specific things that we went through. And just kind of like the want to like open people's eyes about these experiences, because I like, and I've seen it firsthand. People walk by and they read the narrative next to each painting and they're like, this actually happened to you guys. And that's the exact reaction that we want, is like to raise awareness so that things can change. But yeah, to answer your question, I ended up I didn't finish all the paintings before I started planning making a deck and presenting to potential venues and hosts. So I remember I reached out to the Rangers 2021 summer, so last summer, with my deck and everything and renderings. So I used like my architecture skills also to be able to do like a video walkthrough of the proposed
Oh,
space and have each image of either a photoshopped image if the painting wasn't done, or the completed image of the painting mapped onto the modeled like canvas in my 3D model. And so it was like a literal video of walking through what it would look like. and renderings and things. So I think that helped obviously sell the idea and the show. So the Rangers got on board for their Girls Hockey Day, presented by Duncan, January 30th. It was at Hulu Theater in MSG. And there was like a panel discussion also. Stefan Matteau was also a part of that, and their in-game host was the moderator. So we talked about a lot of things, but there were so many girls from the Junior Rangers program there. It was awesome to see, and they asked a lot of questions. And then from there, it went to a gallery in Jersey City. So, through the tunnel, just, across the water there to Jersey City. And from there, it went back to my hometown, Buffalo, New York, to a gallery here. And then, so around the same time, right after the Rangers were interested, then I presented the whole show to the Kraken. I knew there were leaders in the NHL in terms of inclusivity, diversity, just like totally on top of that, like a very progressive team. So I thought it would be a good fit. They did as well. So we started planning the Kraken event probably the fall of 2021. So I'm in talks with other hosts. I can't release any information yet, but the tour is definitely not over.
Yeah, no, even reading about it before it came here about I guess you had to make a decent amount of calls to pods to get everything set into place.
Yeah.
Definitely sounds like a lot, to get it there, but I was glad to see that, because when it's your hometown team, you'd like to see them doing stuff like that, right? And I guess I'd just like to ask why you feel that way, that they've done such a good job, because I know that the game, I think the weekend that you were there, the Black Girl Hockey Club founder was there. We had our women in hockey night. They had the Hockey is for Everyone merchandise in the store. And that was really cool to see. And I know they've done a good job. I'm kind of upset that Cammy Granado got a deal with Vancouver, because I would have liked to keep her in Seattle, but it sucks that happened at the timing that it did, because in the store we had just put out the book that she had wrote, and I think it was her brother had illustrated. We put that out, and the next day off to Vancouver. I'm like, no. I guess just from your perspective, what are your thoughts on how they've done that? Just
from
organization.
From the start of the organization, just hearing about the amount of female staff members with disabilities, BIPOC staff, just absolute leaders in that regard. Like, I have not seen another organization do it like the Kraken. So I knew that the Kraken was a team that I totally wanted to host my art show that had to do with gender, inequities. So
it's just also really cool yes, at Flex, it's a cool building already, but to see just how many kids are running around in hockey stuff, and most of the time is little girls, and just that's really cool just to have that opportunity to have something like that. Because again, I don't think before that we had anything youth hockey related at all up here in the Pacific Northwest. I could be wrong, because I
also want to give credit. I noticed something unique at KCI, their adult hockey program. Props to Andy, the director of that, because like the amount of teams, and it's co-ed also. Like, I have not seen an adult hockey league that like in depth at any other, like, we definitely don't have that in Buffalo. And yes, you're right. Like, the amount of little kids running around that arena, I think it was like always busy whenever I was there for my art show. So I think, yeah, the addition of the Kraken to that area is definitely growing the sport at all age levels and genders. It's amazing.
And obvious, they took my heart away because again, just kind of eating up all the hockey stuff I can get till the season ends. I mean, with the women's hockey team here at UW, and then obviously talking to you about it. I guess that kind of touches on what my last thing was going to be, because you touched on, can't spoil any details, which totally get, about where you'll be next. But I mean, how much were you able to interact with the crowd in Seattle, and what was the sort of overall feeling you took back from that trip?
I think many fans or visitors to the art show didn't quite know that there was professional women's ice hockey, and that's not, I guess that's not atypical as a response. But just something that I noticed, that I think a presence of pro women's hockey teams on the West Coast, I think then they would at least know that that existed. I think, and there is like a women's pro hockey Seattle club, which is amazing. They're fighting to get a team out there. So there was definitely support. Like even the people that didn't know that this existed, they were interested and engaged in the content and asked me a bunch of questions. So a lot of fans bought a lot of prints because they just were blown away by like the message from each like pair of paintings. And so that was really nice to see the support.
Yeah, and just following that, I think they follow our Seattle account, which is really great. The pro women's hockey in Seattle, that would be really great. And just knowing the Seattle Women's Hockey Club is a group that's been around for a decent amount of time, and I know that whenever UW needed ice time or practice time, they were always there, or even an opponent to scrimmage, they were always there. And that's good to see, because I've talked to a few of them, and they said that's the future of women's hockey in Seattle, and that's really cool to see. So that's all I have. I always put socials in the description, and I'll be sure to link your website. I mean, is there anything that you want to put into the world, or you just keeping busy kind of working on some things?
So now my goal, after having like the first 4 shows under my belt within like 2 months time, I'm really focusing on trying to get bids on the physical paintings. So you can go to my website, kimberlysass.com/art-info, and that will take you directly to all of the artwork. You can click the link to place a bid. Starting bids are now at $1,000. Like I mentioned before, 10% of all print and artwork auction sales through April 1st went to the Women's Sports Foundation. I'm in talks with them on extending that, because I definitely have more shows lined up. So TBD on that, but the auction is extended. So get your bids in now if you want the physical painting, if you want to own one of my paintings.
With that being said, again, I really appreciate your time. I'm sure a lot of the stuff that I was kind of pissed about in terms of the women's game, you already deal with. So I appreciate you bearing with me on that, as well as just teaching me more about the sport. Because again, it's been a lot of fun having this team here. I know that the sport's been around in Seattle before, but to have it on this level is really cool. And I just appreciate your time to speak on, not only all you've done, but what you've been a part of, and, the future of the sport as a whole.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.